Hello there. I am so glad that you are here with me tonight because this is going to be fun. I I tell y'all all the time about the guy in East Alabama that was walking out of the woods with a camera on his shoulder, and I saw a juvenile Bigfoot get up from beside a tree where it had been faking as a bush as Jonathan was walking out, and Jonathan didn't know it had happened. So it was so cool to me, and he is who gave me my first look, real honest to God look, at a Bigfoot. So there's that. And the fact that my light just went out. But he is so cool. He is Alabama Paranormal and Bigfoot, but he has also moved over to his spiritual side. And one of the things that took me by surprise, it should not have. I'm trying to get the actual name so I don't mess this up. But when he decided to do this man has never done anything in Habs. Okay, we are we're very much alike in those ways, and our interest in all the weird stuff is fun. So anyway, I'm going to quit talking now, and I'm going to bring you Jonathan Odom.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey, girl, how are you tonight?
I am doing well. We got our thunderstorms through. They're probably heading to you, but you're welcome.
Hey, you need to start looking at thunderstorm maps of your area and then
Yeah.
look at high concentrations of strikes. I figured out some patterns that I got to share with you with Bigfoot and oddness, and you need to start using that. It's very interesting to look at areas and then time it with sightings and then see lightning strikes over certain areas. You're talking about storms,
Yeah.
and that's the data is so awesome now that you can do that. Yeah.
That is. I mean, I have an app on my phone that shows me all the lightning strikes
Yeah.
because I have tall trees and dogs that won't come in. So I like to know where they are before I let
Exactly.
them out.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
it's really cool. What do you find with that?
Well, we had a couple of years ago. We had a Bigfoot meet up in Hollins. We had a bunch of people show up, and every year we'd have this old man that he would come and he'd pull in, and we had all this food, and we would just say, "Come on." And he got to where he'd know me and he'd recognize me from the Bigfoot stuff. 281 videos, 30 minutes long. People recognize you when you're out in the woods. And
Yes.
I said, "Have you ever seen Bigfoot?" He asked at first, "What are y'all doing?" I said, "Well, we're hunting for Bigfoot." He's like, "Really?" I said, "Well, come sit down." So he comes and gets some coffee and we're talking. And I said, "Well, you ever seen anything strange around here?" And he looks at me and he said, "You mean like Bigfoot?" I'm like, "No." "Well, yeah." And he said, "No, but there's a lot of weird lightning patterns around here. You should look it up." And I'm like, "Hold on a second." I
Well,
said, how do you know this? He says, I'll look it up on the weather data. And if you look at it, Miss Rhoden, you'll see that's the one weird part of the Hollins area. And I was like, holy shit. So then I started comparing sighting reports of all the ones I've got with lightning data. And it's makes you wonder about a lot of things, you know?
well, I know of a location. I wasn't able to. I was invited to go to it this year, and I wasn't able to. Um, where there is a very anomalous area,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty sure whether you've talked to anybody about it or not, with all of your traipsing around, you've probably been to it at least inadvertently.
Is it in, there is one that you don't know that I'm chasing that me and my wife have been told about because I've learned to read LIDAR. So I can read terrain very easily now. And it is close to a snake effigy in the woods. And it's a 10-foot tall minion, Menier, which is like the stones in the UK, but there's
Yes.
a lot in the southeast. Did I send you that picture?
I don't know.
Anyway, but it's 10 feet tall. Me and Kristen have located it, and we go into this place, and this is a place that we went camping to this place, and across the ridge, this pinnacle of rock caught my eye, And for years, I'm like, what? Why is this rock catching my eye? And then I was playing around with Google and found somebody had marked it, and it's actually, I don't know how old it is, but it's almost like a temple complex. So when we go there, we will be we will be very complimentary. We won't be intrusive because
Right.
it's not on any kind of ley lines or anything like that. But there's a lot of weird stuff out there in the woods that people, I don't know. I think sometimes in the woods, if you really believe in little people and you really believe in witchcraft and you really believe in the supernatural, I think there's things in the woods that you walk by them and it's almost like the Bigfoot that you saw. They camouflage and it's just very easy
Yes.
to do because this is such a fast paced world we live in. Nobody stops and looks in 3 square meters and see exactly what's happening in the world. You know?
That's actually a great point. One of the things that truly always blows me away is that I do not choose to go hunt Bigfoot
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not that fast anymore. I broke my knee.
Of course, of
And
course.
so I am not Sally Sunshine on the running.
Yeah,
But I I couldn't outrun one any damn way.
yeah.
But I also could not outrun a panther.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
So, and we have those too.
yeah.
And one of the things that I still have nightmares about this, and this is something you told me,
Yeah.
an experience that you had, as it was going away from you. Do you want to share that?
I've had a lot of experiences. You had to let me know which one I was talking about because
Okay. Well,
was it a spirit or a Bigfoot or a little person? What was it?
no. In this particular case, you thought it was a cat, and I would agree with you because it was
We
a
we
man
go ahead.
being taken away, screaming, "Help me, help me."
Oh yes, that okay. I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
I I had some audio recordings on in Talladega National Forest on the road, and I'll talk about it because everybody knows about it now. Because
Right.
it's 5:29, and it was a recording of somebody out in the woods, and I don't know if it was a man or not, but I turned the footage over all the audio to the service because in that same area that year, I had found several torn campsites, and it sounded like it was, but and I don't think it was anything like a cougar or anything. I think it was just, you know,
I
that's
do.
that's exactly what I think it is. It's because one thing people need to realize is me and my wife, we still go camping. My son's camping tonight. We spend a lot of time in the woods. But in these last days, I have said for years that there's more things in the woods besides Bigfoot. Now,
Yes.
there are extra things in the woods
Yes.
now. And I think it's in time. I think it's the natural progression of things. And it's kind of like where I'm going into the field I'm going to now, helping people with unusual supernatural problems and then helping people on the psychological side of life when they have a supernatural encounter. A lot of times when people have a supernatural encounter, it completely shakes up their world in so many ways.
It
And it's
shapes their
almost,
religion. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, it does.
it
And
does.
I'm finding there's a need for that. For some reason, the clergy are not getting it, so I'm very excited. That's why I wanted to tell you about what's happening. And it's weird. Anytime I go in the woods, me and Kristen and my son, we see stuff so much. It's like, oh, okay, because we are so open to
Mhm.
things now. You know,
Well, now I'm going to have to ask you,
okay.
do you carry shiny things to donate when you go into the woods?
No, because I'm a very spiritual man called for a very spiritual purpose, and I've made this pact with a deity that I don't really do that. I have rules in my own life according to big stuff with Bigfoot and stuff and spirits that I've encountered in the woods. I don't open a barter system because I'm not there to trade. I'm there to watch and observe, and that's just me personally.
Have
I
you ever?
think people.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, have you ever had an experience with Faye?
Yes, I mean, me and Bill Roser saw the little people
Yeah.
around Horse Creek Cemetery several times. I've heard the calling of the woods on 529 in the middle of the summer. Talked to a lot of people with a Cherokee that told me, don't go toward that.
Yes.
And I think you had suggested a book years ago, Jot, about when the things disappear overseas in Ireland and people ask them back and the little people bring them back. It's a beautiful book.
Well, I think it is too.
Yeah.
And when there's so many times when I went to, what is the name of that park here? Red Mountain Park.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, they've got a great little museum. It's basically urban
Yeah.
with just this beautiful park in the center of it.
Yeah.
And we actually, when I was with my team here,
Yeah.
it was so bizarre because Wanda Reeves, do you remember her?
Yes, I
Is
do.
that her husband was a Cherokee,
Yeah.
Red Cherokee Nation chief? Um, she was like, "Do you have any dimes with you?" And I said, "Probably. I mean, I've got a change thing in the Explorer, right?"
Yeah.
So she said, "You're going to want to get some of those and bring them with you." I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
So I did. And hey, Raymond and Lori. But it was so interesting because I set them down, but I would sit them under leaves
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever because I wanted to know because nobody was going to see them and there were going to be people walking in behind us because we were doing a public
Yeah.
experience. So, yeah, it was interesting because none of them were there when we came out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I growing up and coming to terms with finally my spiritual gifts now in this later part of my
Yeah.
life, I realized that I saw spirits very young before as soon as a lot of my abuse began. And so I've always had a running rule for years not to interact. And it's weird that you say that about the dimes because I find dimes all over that school that I work at. And it's like, okay, I found about $3.07 whatever in cents. And I'm like,
Right.
and it is weird. And it's weird how sometimes supernatural occurrences will happen in places with lots of energy, and most people just go right over them.
Yes.
I think it's cool that you do, and so that's me personally, but I'm crazy sometimes. So
We are crazy sometimes, but it's really interesting because, um, and I'll tell you, when when we go to Cherokee, I'm wandering because David plays poker,
yeah.
right? So I am a cat on the loose, right? And so usually it's like around Thanksgiving and for one of those tournaments and everything's closed. And I will not go into the woods even there by myself because, and they have a theater
Yeah.
up. Yeah, it'll come to me in a minute. I'll have to look it up.
Something of the hills,
Yes,
smoke on the hills or something. Something
I'm gonna look that up while we're talking.
like that. What
But
is it? Something on the hills? Smoke on these hills? I bet that's who knows. But that's that to me. Every time I go up there, I love it. I love every time I go. I love the woods there. But a lot of times too, it's
unto these hills.
yes, unto these hills. But a lot of times too, me and Kristen talk about this a lot. It's almost like a couple 100 year sadness.
Well, it is. I mean,
You know?
because I had people that went to Arkansas before the Trail of Tears,
Yeah,
but I had relatives who walked it.
yeah,
And, it's one of my good friends lives on the Trail of Tears up outside of Mentone.
yeah,
And I did not, yeah, I drove to her house one day from Birmingham and her tree in her front yard has all this stuff growing in it
yeah,
from, there's shackles and there's
yeah.
there's a bicycle that's embedded in the tree. There's, you know,
Yeah.
it's a weird tree.
Yeah.
And when I first went and I was looking at this stuff, I was tripping out
Yeah.
because I didn't know it was the Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
I hadn't even gotten to her house yet.
Yeah.
But there's so much involved with what we're talking about. You know, every person that I personally know who has worked at Unto These Hills have experienced little people
Yeah. Yeah.
because I have not there. And that's where my heritage is. So, yeah, that's where my people left from.
Right. Where our family hunting camp is, it's in Bibb County, close to Aliceville, and a lot of the cemeteries around there. Me and Kristen go to it, and we love old cemeteries like you guys probably do. And we got to talking to this guy, so he's like, "Oh yeah, sure, come. Well, whenever I'm on my land, you can come over to the cemetery and we look." And we got to talking to him, and he told us that the area that we were close to is a lot of swamps. The swamp is very beautiful when you're in it. He said it was like a boundary area between the Cherokee and the creeks, and I didn't know if he really meant it or not. But I've got a lot of weird shit on thermal down there that I can't explain, and it's just it's an odd, beautiful area through the where Tuscaloosa, where the river comes through, and through
Mm-hmm.
Aliceville, and it's just I don't know. I think certain they're almost the Bible, certain religious texts talk about dominions, powers, principalities, and
Yeah.
it almost has to be, especially in the woods.
Well, I always get there's so few areas that we can really get away from everything,
Yeah.
And they're so valuable. And yet, you know, I do, I do the Thomas Divide Lights research up there too, but in the summer, but because in the winter you generally can't get up to that
Yeah.
once they start closing the
Yeah.
Blue Ridge Parkway. But it's really something that you're so fortunate in because your family likes the outdoors.
Oh yeah. Very lucky.
And my husband grew up on the Black Warrior River down in Holt.
Yeah.
So he has had enough of the great outdoors.
Yeah.
He's all about the great indoors and creature comforts and
Yeah.
stuff like. Well, and he married, a passenger princess, so it's just kind of I'm not really because I go on my own and I do great. But he considers me that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, "Oh yeah, you just drive. I'll look."
Did he have any Bigfoot experiences growing up on the Black Warrior River? He had to have something happen.
Well, I'm sure that there was something because he was hunting by himself way before he should have been.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do it anymore. He just did it then. And I don't know that he actively sought things to eat. He was just started with a BB gun, moved up to a rifle. But, his sister was already in college by the time he got to school.
Yeah.
So it was just him and his mom, and he'd just go off and do everything.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he probably did. I've never, ever asked because I feel like with what I do, and he knows what I do, obviously. I mean, I'm in here for 2 hours a night for 2 nights a week, right?
Absolutely.
And he helps me with my research. He's really fascinated in some of the ancient alien theories, and he helps me if I'm trying to do a paranormal investigation where I need to triangulate microphones and stuff like that. He'll help with that. And but he doesn't go and investigate with me as a rule. He'll go to a battlefield with me somewhere.
Yeah.
But he doesn't.
Does he ever pick up stuff?
Yeah. He won't tell you much. But
and that's one of the most fascinating things of me choosing helpers instead of being a preacher is I can work with any kind of people. And I've noticed this is the cool part of the gift is coming upon people that are gifted. They have been expunged from the church because they have natural gift given by God. And that's really fun to help people. to launch. That's why I asked that question about it. So I was like,
Well,
oh, yeah.
you know, and that is so tragic. And I know why you do what you do.
What's tragic? What's
That
tragic?
are people who are supposed to be the most inclusive
Mm-hmm.
because they're told to love everybody
Yeah.
and they're not told to love the people that you don't think are weird.
Yeah.
They're just told everybody as I have loved you.
Yeah.
Well, no, they don't, because the minute that you're the least bit different, your butt's out of there.
Well, one of the first miracles Jesus did was not in the synagogue; it was at a
Yep.
wedding party. And then a second miracle he did when he transformed the lady at the well, it was third shift where the crack hoes and the pimps and the thieves and the robbers and the murderers and everybody else are coming off the ship just to go to bed sleep during the day, and he's ministering to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I would not even be afraid to say I'm a reformer because I some of it. Me and Kristen are encountered so many situations where the supernatural is supposed to be evident in the church, but it's got entwined in certain things, and the people in the leadership and don't know what to do anymore. And I'm like, hold on a second, hold on a second. But I also know that it creates a niche for what I'm fixing to go do in my life, my true calling.
Yeah. And having found that calling, and we're kind of late in life. You're younger than I am. And it's just trust me on that. But seriously. But it's so interesting to me because you've been spiritual in your interaction with your loves, your family, and you're traipsing everywhere. And
Yeah,
you were the first Bigfoot person that I knew personally.
yeah,
And I watched your videos so much, and then we've talked
yeah,
before
of course, yeah,
and we're friends. And it's just really, it's so cool to me that you have taken the path that you're moving on now. Because, yeah, when you were talking to me about New Orleans,
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
that was cool.
It was cool as shit. The experience, you know. But you have to realize that the times that you met me before was when I was in my true monster form of a person that was making terrible decisions in his life, hurting everybody he knew. My father passed away. I didn't go to his funeral. There was a lot of reasons, just crazy stuff that I overcome, and I got to the point there that I hated myself, yet I knew I had run from the supernatural my whole life. And then once I submitted, it was almost like quantum speed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about, and Kristen will tell you, it's like slow down, but it's something that I also have pursued. And with going into counseling just men, I've had to drink every part of bile and awfulness that was my life, the reason I was created, and get deep spiritual insight, not only into my life, but why I've seen spirits, why I was scared of them, and making peace. And yeah, my friend, you have no clue what a crazy ride and an amazing ride. And it's not over yet. And that's the most beautiful
Part
thing.
of this is just starting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
Definitely.
mean,
Definitely. 100%.
truly.
Yeah. And I've worked the last 2.5 years in not really an inner city school, but close enough to inner city that it's dangerous. And I've seen so many lessons of humanity, yet seen. I told you how many crazy stuff I've seen in this little junior high school. And it's like, but in the terms of all of that, I've truly become a helper. The last 4 years, me and Kristen's did lots of cases, and we were called to do it. So we're doing it for free. So I finished my counseling degree, so I can do what I'm supposed to do, but also do pro bono. Pro bono is very important to me because there's a lot of people out there that need it that don't get it.
Yes. Well, and that's true, and as well as I do that a lot of times the people that call us um, for paranormal things, right?
Oh yeah,
Um, as a rule, I won't go on a residential anymore
Yeah. Yeah.
because the team that I was with kept sending me these people and wanting me to go and visit with them, and they wouldn't go with
Right.
me.
Right.
And I'm like, I appreciate that. And I do have, you know, gifts that are suited to this occasion. But a lot of times these people are batshit crazy.
Oh yeah. 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 And
And
it's yeah.
and I'm not going into a home that I don't know by myself. And, you know, I did an investigation with some people that, we just kind of came together as a group.
Yeah.
And we went into this home and cleansed it because that's all it needed. There wasn't anything nutty, nothing dangerous. I mean, it was just, it had some, wonky energy. So we cleansed it.
Yeah.
And I found out that a group of people also from this area, and some of them, went and did an exorcism on a 6-year-old little girl
Yeah.
in that house
Yeah.
because they told the people that there were demons there
Yeah.
after we had cleansed the home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so we weren't dramatic enough. You needed to have
Yeah.
this. And, I'm sorry. If you're running around calling yourself an exorcist and you're not church trained,
Oh yeah.
you're not going to win.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and
kill, seek, and destroy is serious.
yeah, and I get a lot of calls for a lot of things, and I want to say something. I want to preface it by saying that I have to be very humble with what I do because of course it will destroy you very easily.
Yes, it will.
And a lot of times, I just talk to a person maybe 15 minutes. And that's usually all I need, and it's crazy. These paranormal investigators are like these big fat preachers that want to save the world, but they can't push back from the table.
They
And I
can't
know I'm
save
being very
themselves.
hard, and I know I'm very they're wannabe, but there's been 5 people, probably about 5 people in the last 2 years that have contacted me out of nowhere, and they're like, "We want to talk to you all the time," and I'm like, "Oh, what?" And then they would give me the calling card. This is what we, and I'm like, okay, whatever. But so yes, it's right. And so what I've did is this: I've learned to take my discernment on a super level and get it before. There's a case in Alabama. There's actually 4 cases in Alabama that keeps popping up with haunted gas stations, and a lot of times we'll call, we'll pray, and it'll stop, and it'll begin back up. And I think a lot of this stuff, I think a lot about spirits a lot because I drive through a neighborhood to get to my school, and I wonder, is this house haunted? Which house is this? And the SROs will tell me where murders happen, and I'll drive by them, and I don't know. Some of it's hard to predict. Some of it I don't know, but there's a lot of crazies in it, a ton.
Well, I just could not. I just could not hold with doing that to a child without having had analysis.
Well, and it's absolutely that's where there. I have found out through 18 years of counseling and hard taking the supernatural that I have been with, combine it with my with all kinds of degrees, getting more degrees,
Right.
and even then, when I'm handling something spiritual situation that is not a counseling situation, that's how people call us. That's how people get possessed. That's how people get oppressed. That's how people get haunted houses. But I think it's the general age we live in. It's an age of discovery. There's an age of enlightenment that is just beginning where we're at, especially like we talked about before with the age of discovery around the corner. There's all kinds of crazy stuff happening.
Yeah,
Awakenings, I suppose.
I do know.
Here we are.
It is why we're who we are.
And
It's funny.
yeah, you know.
I was I was just guesting on a show the other day just to say happy birth. Thought it was just to say happy birthday to my friend, and wound up speaking and hearing from a lot of different people after that show. And because so many people were calling in and sending recordings and stuff, and I saw people come through that I hadn't seen in 10 years. Right,
Yeah.
most of them 5, but a few were 10 since I started doing shows and stuff. But it was so weird because you could see who looked different.
Yeah.
Okay.
So spiritual
And
transformation over time.
yeah. And if you're going to do this, you need to be protected. You need to know how to be protected, right?
Oh yeah.
And one of the people was, because I was talking about sloths, which is where I go when I have a new piece of equipment so I can learn how to do it. Because hello, I had
Exactly.
I had a 3 voice EVP one
Yeah.
afternoon, right? They were talking to me, then they were talking to each other, and then there was profanity. It wasn't a radio station.
Exactly.
And I was just like, hey guys, so, and I made a comment about going there, and somebody was like, ooh, that's just such a terrible place. After the show, somebody was, reaching out to me about, be careful, it's lost.
Yeah.
I'm careful everywhere.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it's a good place to train. You have to be very discreet because they don't want ghost hunting there anymore.
Yeah.
But and you have to respect rules.
Yeah.
But it's just so it's so weird to me that people will just run out and you know I'm going to go and challenge this spirit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really? Good luck with that because you can't freaking see them
Yeah.
if they
Oh
don't
yeah.
want you to,
Oh yeah.
right? And if you come running up into my house with your fist drawn,
Yeah.
you're going to get whacked.
Exactly. Well, and I think I'm fascinated by driving by locations and
Yes.
sensing them. Like where I work at the school system, there's several big churches that are abandoned
Yeah.
because of that school system. And I tell people all the time, yes, Slauson, there's these cool locations, but if you're really brave, go to
Yeah.
one of them churches, go in one of the Sunday school rooms, just sit down in the dark. And but that's a whole nother type of actually real terror.
Yes.
I mean, and it's just like, so that's why I don't go to them places. I don't need that shit in my life. I got enough
I
crap. I'm
know, right?
spiritual enough. Yes.
Can you
You know,
believe we used to?
every time I would go in the woods, of course, Chris would tell me be careful, and Richard would go with me a lot. And we would. He's a big ex police officer, and we would, man. Did I ever tell you about the time we went out to the wood? Woman, her house was real far out in the woods, and she had Bigfoot on her property, and she could call him up.
You did not.
Oh, yeah. And let me tell you something. This person, if she was not a wood witch, she was a herb witch. If she was not a herb witch, she was a wood
Garden
witch.
witch.
Something. Yeah, we went to. Is it? Can I tell the story? Is it okay? Can I tell
Say
the
that
story?
again.
Can I tell the story about it?
I don't care.
Okay, good deal. Okay, good. So we went to this place, and Richard with me. He's real big, and we went to this lady's house, and I think it was in November sometime, and she told us she had Bigfoot on her property. And I asked some other Bigfoot researchers that we have been working a case 10 feet, 10 not 10 feet from 10 miles from her, and so it may be related. So we went to this property, and we got there, and it was it was raining, and we had our gear on, had the thermal underneath, and we get there, and she says, well, me and my husband will be down there in a minute. Let me give you the keys, and we'll come down there with you guys and hang out. So she said, before you go, let me call up the Bigfoot for you. And I was like, and Richard, I could see Richard in the dark. He was like, and I was like, okay. I said, well, it would be handy. We don't have to go traipsing down there. If you can get them come right up, we can go right down there and we can get them on thermal. And she says, well, hold on. and she says she did something. She said she whispered something, and you could hear Bigfoot off in the distance, and then you could hear one over here, and then you heard one from the pine thicket, and me and Richard looked at each other and we're like, and she says, "Watch this." And she said something else, and the dog started barking around the neighborhood. And we're like, we're totally dialed in now. We're like, oh, and Richard's looking at me, and he kicks me, and I'm like, man, what's up with this? And he's like, and she says, well, I'm going to send y'all down there. I don't want y'all to be bothered by them. And she says, shut up. And all the dogs go quiet, and then the Bigfoot trails off. And we're like, you got me. And so we get the key, and Richard, we get in the truck, and I tell Richard, well, just walk side the truck, and I'll pull a bird. He said, no, I'm getting in the truck with you. So we got down there, and they had this beautiful property with a lake, and they would baptize people down there. And so we get down there, and so Miss I almost said her name. She pulled up with her husband, and they got out, and it's like a baptismal area, and we're talking. And Richard goes, Jonathan, and he turns and he hands me the thermal, and there's a creature that's looking. He goes like this, and he comes, and then Richard's like falls to the ground with his head hurt, and we had to leave the property, but we had a great thermal. And once I got him off the property, that headache left, and he told me, he says, when I was looking, while you were looking at the thermal, I looked at her, and there was a flash of light, and I couldn't see anything. And so we went back several times, got some good footage, but we just couldn't deal with the stuff that would try to come home, the stuff that was
right. Yeah.
She was very sweet, very, very sweet soul. There was just a connection with her in the woods. I don't know, and we didn't feel threatened. It was just, and he kept seeing that white light, and so
was the light creating the headaches?
I don't know. To this day, I don't know, because you can see on the thermals. I have so much thermal footage. You can see us sweeping around. There's the lady. There's her husband, and then he looks at me, and then he turns and looks, and he hands me and then I turn around and look, and then he's on the ground. Yeah, it was crazy, but that's
terrible though.
And it was but we went to a lot of different places, and that never repeated itself. And we worked all around that property because I could figure out that on the National Forest side, I can get within a mile of her property, and I knew that Bigfoot would cross that property to get to her property. So then I triangulated it and had it pretty much dead to rights.
Well, don't you find it interesting? Because you've been in the woods enough to know this, and out when it was old 280. Yeah, going over Double Oak Mountain.
I didn't get my battery from my Mac. Keep on
talking.
Sure,
you do that.
It's right here.
I'm going to talk amongst ourselves. While he does that, I'm going to look at my light.
There we go.
Because
we're up plugging in, KK.
I am having a terrible time trying to light my light.
Hey, will you show me where you plug your stuff in? There we go. Perfect.
Play-Doh stuff? You got Play-Doh?
There we go.
I'm still trying to make my lights work. I figure while you're
there we go.
Is that better? I think that's better. Okay.
I don't get no power.
So I don't know why it went away.
Did you just drop off?
Look, it's not showing green as it comes out.
It's not showing what?
Yeah, I'm almost my Mac. I've almost got it. I'm fine. So I'm getting it plugged in, so it'll show it's charging up. Okay.
Do that. Okay. I am going to do this.
Okay, I'm good now. Thank you, KK.
Yeah.
Okay, I had that drink right there.
Yeah.
All right, we're back.
Maybe I am.
Right. Yeah, I forgot to plug it in. I got so enthused about talking.
I was having a little bit of trouble with.
All right, perfect.
Here we go. Well, now I'm not hearing you. That's what I get for trying to do this. Give me a sec.
Okay.
You know what? I don't know why I do all of this stuff, and I have problems sometimes. But maybe it's our topics.
Hey, will you bring me a hair, I mean, like a thingy in my hair?
But
You do have an alien behind you.
that's what I'm going to do.
Yes.
We're back.
You do have an alien behind you, so.
I do. Don't you love him? I had a blue one. My husband makes sure that I always have an alien in my office.
That's awesome.
So it's my other one was blue. This is Al Leon.
I told Kristen I want to go do that. I want to go to the Alien Inn, and I want her to see the desert. And I want.
Oh my gosh! I went for the first time last year.
Did you really?
I did. I was such a tourist. I went on the they picked me up at my hotel, and it was just a nice drive. They had a nice little, and we got out there, and it's a beautiful drive. And you know, there's lush greenery on the way to it. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah.
So, but she has to get the little alien burger.
Oh yeah. I mean, I want to see the desert. I want to just take her and show.
Well, if you do that tour, they take you out to a dry lake bed.
See, that would be cool.
And Grim Lake, there's nothing. It's like you're standing in the middle of, Logan Martin with no water.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was cool. You got to go.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's just, I don't know. Now the catch.
I had just never been. Yeah, well, as much as I go to conferences and stuff out there, I had never been.
Yeah.
So I did go to the Crystal Hill where the Integratron is. That was cool.
When Kristen wants to go to Sedona, and I went years ago, and she wants to go to Sedona too, and I want to go. Have you been to Sedona?
I have. I actually got a crystal chakra alignment while I was there.
Nice. So you have to give us pointers of where we need to go then.
Well, I'm going to tell you, my husband does not get moved by spiritual things too often anymore, or not visibly. And we were sitting in one of the vortexes, is the Crystal Cathedral of the Cross. Yeah. And we walked in and sat down, and he looked at me and he was like, "We're not Catholic, okay?" He was like, "I think we need to light a candle or something." I'm like, "We're not Catholic." It's like, "Well, I think we need to do that." And I'm like, "Well, we can. They have them right over there."
Light a candle.
He wanted to light candles for the kids because he just looked at me. We walked in, he looked at me, and he was like, "Oh my." I'm like, "Yeah, this is definitely that." And so he was just so reverent.
Yeah.
Because you can't not be.
Yeah.
And the next day I did a Vertex tour. And when we tried to do a night sky watch, but it was a full moon, which shot that out of the water. But it was beautiful. Oh, yeah. And I mean, we just happened to go. We had been staying in Williams, Arizona, going to the Grand Canyon, and we just decided to ride over to Sedona, and it was so freaking cool. We didn't go the interstate. We went down a little mountain road.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. Y'all will love Sedona.
Well, and I grew up reading Louis L'Amour as, I didn't have a TV growing up. And so I read. It was a beautiful experience reading all the time. And he wrote a book called The Haunted Mesa. And then that got me reading on the ancestral Puebloans and then the Cliff Dwellers.
Yes.
And we watched on you. And I told Kristen I want to go 9 Mile Canyon, and I wanted to just stop and let's go up there. And I know it's probably been found, but I just want to touch one and just, because it's such it's a different type of energy out there. And I know it's the same
Yes.
than this, and
Well, I don't think it is.
I mean, it's, to me, it's more ancient, I guess. Does that make sense?
It's more, yeah, I just use this word, but it's true. It's reverent.
Yes.
I mean, just the ground is reverent. And they have all the little touristy, kitschy kind of things. Lots of turquoise, lots of dream catchers, stuff, very catering to their crowds. But if you are, even when you're in that little, and it's a teeny, teeny, tiny downtown area, but you can take a vortex tour. I took a vortex tour. The woman that was doing my chakra cleansing, and this is how weird Sedona was. I tried to schedule one, and we were only going to be there for one night. And the lady called me back and said the woman who I have scheduled to go with me would like you to come with us if you still want to go. And she was from England, the lady was. And she was in a tough part of life. Her husband had just left her. Yeah. And so she was trying to find peace. Right. And we had the best time. And the stuff that you were talking about, what I am this morning.
Right.
Right. This lady was getting out of the car. She got out first. And she looked at me and she was like, I'm so honored that you were part of this with me today.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, well, thanks. I just thought we were having a great time. Yeah. And she told me about why she was there. And I was like, oh, well, I hope that did that. I mean, I hope that you did everything that you wanted here. And she said, well, I did. I'm still going to be here for a couple of days, but this was so the way this was supposed to go.
Right.
And I said, well, thank you, but I'm not that, Yeah. So, it was awesome.
Well, and a couple of weeks ago, we stayed up there close to Mentone on Gulf Tatum Road, close to Cloudland Canyon State Park.
Yes.
And we stayed at this place, and we were on top of this mountain, and it was the most beautiful thing. I told Kristen, I said, I'm going to do me a Bigfoot yell. And we yelled, and I have never been anywhere in the United States of the world where the sound was deadened. And me and Kristen was like, do it again. I did it again. And it was like, but I also felt a weird reverence to the supernatural in that area. And so it's weird. I think the most fascinating with energy vortex is probably the ancient American on the eastern side with the snake effigies and what's being discovered with LIDAR.
Yes.
I mean, it's there's definitely a connection. And I love helping people with leading up to becoming the counselor for just men. But I love seeing people that have spiritual gifts and helping them develop it through just object lessons, like little tiny things. Working at that intermediate school, I find so much weird stuff. Like the other day, I had this crazy spiritual problem when I was working and I couldn't figure it out. And I found a little red magnifying glass without a lens. And I was like, and I got it. And it's really crazy that with helping men counseling on the psychological side of a spiritual experience, that there is a need. And that's kind of, I've wanted to transform and I love the woods, but I also love helping people. And I'll always be a child of the woods. Always.
You will.
And she will too, and our kids. And this is where this is what I've been training my whole life to do. Is when I had told you about with helpers and counseling, and it's odd. You're seeing this too. There's a big need for supernatural counseling that's not necessarily religion or religious, but it's
Well,
you know
it's because religion is letting people down
yes,
because they're running from that.
yeah,
And when you're raised in faith, then you look for that, and it's you have to find a way to get through things. You know, one of the things that with COVID especially that went by the way was mental health care,
oh yeah,
emotional health care.
yeah,
And if you were an abused person, you were trapped with your abuser because you couldn't leave. You weren't supposed to, you couldn't go to school, couldn't go to church, couldn't go to the grocer without being in a hazmat suit, right?
oh yeah. Well,
And
oh yeah.
it just destroyed so many people.
And people don't realize what people do not realize about COVID and what you just said.
Yeah.
We dealt with several cases during COVID, several where
Yeah.
people were directly associated with the trauma that happened in the house. The spirit got the house back into the family line. And then during COVID, the bad energy sit exactly like you said, Katie, and it sit and it metastasized like a
Hmm.
sickness. And all of a sudden, it manifests as in paranormal activity, paraplegic activity, kids acting crazy, people fighting, and it's the
Yeah.
psychological symptoms that we're dealing with now. Healers,
Yeah.
helpers, we are. You're 100% right. You know,
Well, I mean, that was always going to be a result from that,
yeah.
which is just ridiculous. I have all kinds of opinions about that, but it's just so crazy. Do you know? I'm going to just tell you this because you'll appreciate the irony of this. I got my first vaccine. I waited and waited and waited. I got a J&J. Fine with a J&J. Do you know that I could go to Scotland without a booster? I could not come home without a booster.
So how did you come home? Did you have to get one over there? Or?
No, I had to get one before I left. So
Okay.
that because I wasn't going to get one there, they weren't giving them.
Yeah.
We were the only people that's stupid. And, you know, but and that's right about the time that the border was wide open, right?
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, well, I'll just freaking walk across the border with everybody else. And my husband was like, you're not walking across the border. So, but yeah, to board my flight, I had to have my booster done. And I thought, I'm going to wind up with some dread disease because of you jerks. Wasn't the word I used. But it was just kind of like, people are crazy. And
Oh
it
yeah.
was scary. It was bad. It was horrible if people had stuff. But, there's no way that I wasn't going to Scotland.
Yeah.
And David insisted that I come home. So I had to do that. And it went so against everything I believed in. Everything I believed in. But I'm so glad that I held out for the J&Js because that Moderna stuff scared me.
Yeah.
That was some badass stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think one thing I try to do with coming to terms with my fears and helping me in my fears of the supernatural, my fears of coming to terms with is there are rules to it. And then we
Yeah.
have these man-made fears that's put on us in this present age that sometimes people are scared to death and they simply just need to unplug. Watch what people
Yes.
what you put in your mind, people.
Go
Please,
watch Andy Griffith. I
huh?
mean, people just need to watch Andy Griffith. I
Yeah,
mean,
or
or
read.
Bewitched, or something that's light and funny and
Yeah,
down home.
read. We have so many books around here,
Classics.
and
Read
it's just
classics.
yes. but this is the world where, and it is an emerging consciousness and openness, and there's all kind of new ideas flying
Yeah.
around, and so it's exciting to be in this part of life. The cases that we dealt with COVID started the journey with what we did, because one, a kid actually shot himself, blew the whole bottom part of his face off
Oh my
because
gosh.
a spirit told him to do it, and now he's thriving, completely changed his life, has a good light source in his life. And it's like, just don't open them doors, people, because they will. And it's crazy what we began before with a lot of the paranormal investigators. I have a lot of people call me in that field, and I counsel them, and I tell them, don't do this, this, and this. There's a very known podcaster that had a lot. He moved to North Carolina, and he had a lot of stuff appear in his property, and he was getting recruited by this organization. It was, it's been here forever. And he said, "What I need to do with this, man?" I said, "Just put it back where it is. Just put a note on it, not interested. It'll go away." And it does. But there's this whole underside to. It's just like the clergy abuse. The clergy abuse is all over any religious facet that you have. It's in there.
Yes.
But what it's starting to happen now in this age of discovery and enlightenment, it's starting to come to the surface. And that's what me and Krista, we deal with that a lot, and it's not only, I don't believe it's a demon, Kate. I think it's human behavior masterized into a terrible thing, and the demon's nowhere near it,
I would agree with that. And I would agree with that because we are our own worst enemy. We do to other people things that are just freaking astounding.
Yeah.
I mean, we are such a cruel species, and for no real intent or purpose. I mean, it's illogical, and
Well, yeah.
yet we do it.
But
And then,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, you said that you were getting a lot of clergy cases, and that too is a sign of our times.
Yeah. It's there, and I don't really know. I know there's almost a time where there's the guys coming home from the 40s to 50s, 60s, 70s, and then 50s, 60s, 70s, and the counter-revolution and all of that happened. Yeah, there was a lot of darkness in humanity all over the place. And as a person that is immersed in the spiritual all the time, because I love what I do and I love helping people, it's really amazing to see things. I think to really do good spiritual work, you have to look at things over dispensation, 10-year periods sometimes to get the true meaning, because it changes so fast.
I agree.
And it's interesting helping these men where once you get to talking to men, and in this, especially men of this age, whether it's a man that's seen a Bigfoot or is having problems at work and just general coaching, there is such an object fear of the supernatural, but there's also a stupidity to the supernatural. And it's like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah. It's the yin and the yang.
Yep.
What do you think the fear is so strong of the paranormal, the supernatural?
Okay. Let's do a spiritual experiment. Are you ready?
Sure.
If you take a video on Instagram, YouTube, and it's a terrible video of some terrible thing it's caught on video, I can't stand it. And if you take that video and you propagate it by 13,000 views, I believe that spirit grows each view. And that's why you have so much fear in the world.
So social media.
And video,
being able to keep things going in perpetuity.
Exactly, because we talked about this today. I'm finding out whether it's a generational curse in a family, whether it's a supernatural presence in a building, whether it's a haunted person, whether it's an oppressed person, whether it's a haunted flea market object, that a lot of it is energy.
Yeah.
In simple.
I think it's all energy.
It is. And Ripley and Kiplinger, all these guys that talk about all these things, And I'm finding a lot of time, a lot of the fear of the supernatural comes from object violence being propagated and
Mm-hmm.
people listening. Because if you don't believe it, sit and watch CNN for 24 hours, sit and watch Fox News for 24 hours, and you'll go batshit. You'll go bat crazy.
You can
You know?
say it.
No, but
I
you
think
will.
I said it earlier, but I
But,
mean, you
but it's
do.
what people
It
put in
does do
their mind.
things.
100%.
I don't understand why that's. I don't understand why that's what these outlets are trying to create, because it is a concerted effort.
Because it's, I think if you want to, I work in inner city school. I have a heart to reach African American males because what happens is they get caught up in this violence and they get caught up in this rap. Now, if you're a rap mogul and you own 10 radio stations and all these rappers and they're constantly putting evil and violence, not just rappers, if you're speaking of either violence and if you're a country boy talking about doing something stupid, it's evil and violence and it propagates. I see it every day in the inner city school. These kids they put so much in their mind, so much in their psyche. The base habit is throw down. And then you
Yeah.
see the parents propagating it. A lot of it is psychology. A lot of it is spiritual. Because if you pump that stuff in your head, it's going to affect anyone.
Well, and if you're not old enough to have discernment, then you're just going to eat it up.
Yeah. I dealt with a child last year, 2 years in a row. And this child was born into extreme trauma that was even worse than what I went into. And over the years, he'd smack me and we would deal with him and I instantly realized that what was happening with this child was something that had been put on him in a terrible event, but it will be attached to him the rest of the day. That's why I'm so called to help people that are really with bad trauma, because I have come from that. And so I would talk to God about this child and I would say, God, how can I help this child? And he would say, well, right now, if you were to free this child and he were to be free through the Bible and all the different texts, all kinds of texts, it's very plain that if you free something and you don't make sure it's clean, it comes back. And so the supernatural told me, he said, you can't free him now because as an 8-year-old child, an extreme traumatic, he is nowhere near where he psychologically needs to be. So years later, we've come to the place now where it may be able to deal with. But some trauma, especially supernatural trauma, when it's very bad, it's maybe 10% savage in them. And I think that's what I'm called, and because I've had to deal with it and all. And it's crazy because one bad trauma case creates a lot of bound humans, whether it's a demonic spirit or it's a human spirit. It's I'm always gonna,
Sometimes they're not that different.
yeah, and it's I, you know, people say what scares you in the woods says Bigfoot. Nothing scared me. It's just spirits scare me in the woods, and but what scares me most about a lot of the spirit work that I'm doing with the helpers and with counseling men, what is terrifying me most isn't the scary monster. It's not the booger. It's
Mm.
the normal looking human being that is committing monsters,
Yeah.
being a monster. That's terrifying.
Well, it is terrifying, and I'm always surprised personally when I see humans who are monsters who are just freaking allowed to do that. I mean, I'm talking children in an environment that there's no escape from. No one helps them because, you know, to me that's horrid.
Yeah,
And, you know, that's what I was talking about when we were talking about COVID,
yeah,
because abusers and killers and just sadists had locked down victims.
Oh yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's where a lot of this angst and this anger and everything that we're seeing as a society now is springing from.
Well, and I think too. I think I think I have a this big library of the occult, and I probably shouldn't have the library that I have, but I read a lot of it, and a lot of it I discern, and I come over. Some of it I don't. But what I'm starting to realize is that there is a lot of occult activity going on by people. For instance, I can tell you places in the woods right now that I know they do stupid stuff because there's always stupid stuff happening because they leave things wide open.
Right.
You don't close it back. But it's, I don't know. And I think there's also there's a big misconception, huge, just the biggest misconception there is that you can control it.
That is a huge misconception. And we both know people who have suffered because they were arrogant enough to think that they were more powerful than the supernatural.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah, and me and my wife, we train our mind, we train our body, and we train our soul. Because growing up with my dad's ministry, the stuff that I saw, that the spirit realm, if it does not attack the mind, it will go after the body. If it don't attack the body, it goes after the mind, and it will find an opening if it is
a niche. Yeah.
And it's stuff. A lot of this stuff is not really being taught in churches. It's more prosperity doctrine and other crazy stuff like that. It's not being taught, and now's the time. Because I'm fascinated. I got through reading that book about what happens when there's disclosure, and it's like I'm going to sit back and get my popcorn out, and I'm going to watch.
That is a topic that I love because I love ufology. Okay. I was in California at a conference, getting on a plane to come home that morning when they had the congressional hearings. Okay. And I'm sitting there. I just saw, flipping through my Apple as I'm getting ready and, checking my flight and stuff. And I saw a headline that were like congressional hearings, UAP are real. And I'm like, I cannot leave. I've got all the minds who know everything, who've been researching this stuff for 30 years, some of them. I cannot leave today, And I had an early flight. And it was the day that, at the end of the conference when everybody's doing their workshops and stuff. And I'm like, and they're not coming out for 3 hours. My God.
Yeah. Well, I've spent the last probably 2 years reading all of Dr. Mack's stuff with
John Mack's cool.
You need to just tell me just to stop. This is like,
I'm not going to tell you to stop. This is my jam. Okay. This is my jam.
Okay. Because listen, I can remember as a kid, while dealing with all of my supernatural, there was a guy that came through and he preached for my dad, and he was named Leroy Broadhead. And this was a preacher that was wild. He had tent revivals. He had real crazy power. And he come and Daddy said, I got this guy from Louisiana, Jonathan. And he said, guess what? And I was like, what? And he said, he saw a UFO in the Louisiana swamp, and he's a preacher. I was like, oh my Lord, you got me now. So I remember he come and he didn't, his wife didn't come, so he stayed at the house, and he told me, he said, God made the UFOs. I've never told anybody this story, by the way.
I'm so glad you're telling me. I love this stuff.
He said God made the UFOs. And then at the end, before he got done revival, he sit down on Sunday dinner and he told just the story. He was traipsing through this. He was a Louisiana guy, and he said he drove his boat around this bend and got somewhere and came around the corner. And he said there was a UFO right above and he said, this was a man of God. This was somebody I would consider a true man of God. He said, my boat stopped, and he said, I looked back and I looked at it and I said, if this is you, Lord Jesus, I need this boat to start. And the boat cranked up, and he drove toward it, and he said, wing, and he would use, I remember he used that sound, and years later, he got killed in a car wreck, and I never got to see him. I've looked for footage of this man, and and so that instantly, because I was about 4 or 5, I was reading in very good, and I instantly bugged Daddy and Mom, take me to the library, and I started just devouring. And then I would lay, when we were in the country, I would lay in the back of Daddy's pickup, and apparently they would let me. And I would just look for UFOs for hours. But a lot of people didn't realize the horror to the story I was getting away from abuse too.
That's okay.
So and then I talked to my uncle's 5 years ahead of me, love him dearly. And I here lately, with a lot of the healing that is going on in my life, I've looked back because I've not been a very good person in my first life, and I'm starting to transfer now. And I asked him one day, I said, was I always like this? He says, yes, she was always weird. he said, when you were little, you would stare at things. And he gave me a picture. And Kristen gets tickled at it. I was like 2 years old, and I come out with my finger like that. So I was supposed to be doing this, and then I remember that part of when I started really dealing with the trauma of all the horrific, crazy stuff that happened to me and my sister, God started showing me where at the same time there was a house my grandmother lived in where a spirit tormented me for months. And now I see it hindsight. So I love meeting kids that are awakening and then showing them how to prepare themselves, because I've looked at it from reverse. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does make sense.
Yeah. And so I asked my uncle a couple of months ago, I said, so when I would have these night terrors, what was it about? And then he would tell me, and as soon as he'd tell me, I would go pray, and God would show me exactly what I would see. And I realized that from an early age, this is very brave to even admit that, I've always been able to see spirits, and now that's why I feel such a call to help men and to help children, especially children that are either awakened to a gift, fighting their gifts. And what is cool, the most coolest thing is to get an 85-year-old just waking up and they get kicked out of their church because they have what's in them, and so there's enthusiastic for the supernatural and helping people. And so here we are, right?
Right where you're supposed to be.
Exactly. But it's been a journey. It's been I have seen so many spirits in the school that I've worked at that I told you one of the examples
well, that's where I was wanting to go, because we've talked about this school before.
Mm-hmm.
Just us.
Yes, we have. Yeah, lots.
And it's so rare to be able to talk to somebody who has insight to that, because I know there is no way, with all of the politics that go into education as a profession,
right,
with all depending, and you're middle school, right?
Yeah, third through 8.
Sorry, husband.
You have no. I can make a spiritual map of Birmingham from schools and tell you 100 things that happen in the school. Easy. Because I built up a network, because we pray over these schools. We're trying to push the tide back a little bit in what we're doing. So I talked to a lady a couple of weeks ago that was one of the deep inner city schools, and she says, Mr. Odom, I'm here, you doing this work? And I said, yes, what kind of encounters are you having? And she's like, well, let me tell you. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. But I'm realizing, yes, because you have to realize, Kate, that a lot of these, when I'm seeing trauma in kids' eyes that I saw overseas, something's wrong.
Yes.
And these trauma comes to school, and a lot of times we're loving them at the school. And why I am called to be a helper. I awoke in this school to see that there is a supernatural need to help these children, because a lot of these children go right back to abuse.
Yes, they do.
And it's horrific. It's horrific. And that energy comes, and there's energy in that school that ain't nice. There's energy at school that constantly does this because it knows who I am. There's energy at school that'll go by me, and I'm like, oh, that's that one I saw the other day. And every time I'll ask God, what am I seeing? And he tells me a simple, crazy fact that I hate. Just observe. I'm like, I want to, but
that would be my biggest thing.
Yeah, but I'm starting to get glimpses,
my warrior kicks in those situations because I survived that, right?
Oh yeah,
And survivors, we want to save them all.
yeah,
They can't all be saved.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's, to me, that's the worst.
Well, and that's my Kristen, my beautiful wife, and
And
my
she
therapist.
is.
Yes, she is, and my beautiful wife, and she has seen this from a standpoint, like I said this morning, of spirituality, but not religion.
Hmm.
So she's been a major yin of my yang.
Yes.
But what is cool is the therapist I have, he's also, sometimes they have to tag to me because I'm stupid.
Not even.
I mean, but you understand
But
that
you're
I'm not
learning
normal,
things.
but I'm not normal. You know,
Well, if you were, I'd be so disappointed.
yes, but and it's so, and she brings this spirituality to me that I saw spirituality that was a Christian hiding sins, and it's been such a, and you're right, it is a protector. It's hard to realize that I can't, and so they have a right to be worried because I will have to get to the point where I'm very disciplined and I push away.
Yeah.
Like you warned me this morning, you warned me about the same thing, and I'm heeding people and listening because as much as I want to eat, sleep, and breathe it, and I do, I had to be a human too.
Well, you have to be all of the things that you are.
Yes, and continue to work
Because,
on me too.
well, sure, because that's what integrates you within yourself,
Yeah,
because every component of your life, Kristen, your son, your love for the outdoors, your, you know, family, your studies, being in the school environment and seeing all of the angst and the dismay that can be there. There's also joy. It's just tough to get past the dark sometimes to get to that. And especially at that age, because the hormones are very difficult when you're not in a, fight or die,
yeah,
fight or flee.
yeah.
And if you don't have a way to flee and you're not going to win a fight, you've got some really serious issues
Oh,
because you're walking around with terror on top of everything else
yeah. I sit
because
in the
you won't
lunchroom.
make it out.
I sit in the lunchroom and I watch 400 or 500 kids eat. I watch the grades go through. We'll sit there with SRO, and if you were to look at everybody and mute it and read faces,
Hmm. Yeah.
it terrified the crap out of you. And this, I saw a kid today, man. That's why I was watching, and he was sitting there and he was off his meds, and he would go, and then he would get back control, and then he would do, and I knew exactly what I was seeing. And then
Yeah.
you look over, and there's one over there, and you're like, no wonder I'm seeing so much stuff around the school. My God. But then again, a couple weeks ago, I seen the most crazy act of kindness. And it was like, ooh. It was
Yeah.
like the ray of sunlight. And it was like, ah. And then you'll have kids that don't get any love at home. And they come, like when I was going through some of the darkest times of my life with a lot of crazy stuff, coming through, trying to become what I'm supposed to be. There was this one kid. I've been at the crossing line, and I'd be like, I don't got time for hugs, man. And he would come and hug me, and it was just like, it was basically being healed. I think,
It was being healed.
yeah, yeah. It's been, you know, and so I told you the theory about our high school, right?
Right.
Before, okay, can I give it to you right quick? The theory,
I would like you to let everybody know it.
spiritual theory here. Okay, years ago, around in Jefferson County, there was a state-run asylum that was for the extremely bad of us, the extremely mentally challenged, the people that could not help themselves. They had bound for years, and so this property was shut down a couple of years ago because there was so many abuse allegations they had to criminally prosecute like 60 people, and they shut it down. So, as wise as people are, they demolished it. And if you look on LiDAR, you can see a lot of the pods because it was built in the prison style of the 80s where it was pods. And y'all
Yeah.
remember how that was happening.
Yeah.
And geniuses have built a high school on this place. And once I started looking through newspaper, because I'm a genealogist at heart, I love history, and started to see, and now I work in this school system, and I talk with other people on other properties where extreme violence happens every day.
Yeah.
And there's a spiritual connection. I have people that I know personally that are ministers, men and women ministers in this school system. They'll say kids will look at them and they'll do incantations on them. And I'm like, you better be doing them right back at them.
Yeah.
Don't sit and take that. And so I have a theory that whenever they demolished that mental institution, and a lot of it did not get adjudicated, means it was unresolved karma, unresolved crazy.
Yes.
That a lot of the stuff that happens in that school happens because of that, 100%. And it's just a theory, though, spiritual theory. So what do you think, Kate?
I think that absolutely. If you do not, that's why they have haunted burial grounds. I mean, you cannot, you should not do, that would be like building on top of Bryce, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're not even tearing the old one down. I mean, they don't want to put anything else there.
Yeah.
And to have done that and be a place that you're going to put children was, I don't care who you are or what your belief system is, that's a dumbass move.
Oh, yeah, it is.
I mean,
but people don't think, I don't think people think academically and what state needs and feds, but they don't
use.
And there's no way they
really
could have, I don't think they really could have known.
Well, I think that they could have known. I think that what they needed to do was, if you're going to do that, have someone come and clear the land.
Yeah. And so, like you had asked, we had talked about the stuff in the other school system in Birmingham. I mean, there's the extreme violence in Birmingham right now among the children in a lot of these schools. I mean, I talked to a lady a couple of weeks ago. I said, this is who I am, and I'm putting together this coalition of schools to kind of pray over schools, do some stuff, spiritual work. Have you? And man, she taught me in 45 minutes stuff that she had seen. I mean, and I'm like, and these are little old beautiful ladies in the hood that are 80 pounds, and they doing spiritual work, and people don't have a clue they are.
They feel who they are. Because I'm going to tell you, those women are the ones that are going to save this generation if it can be saved.
Yeah.
And that's a big if. And, people thought that the 60s and 70s were transitional. They were, but not in the way, not to release negativity.
Oh, yeah.
They were trying to find themselves, trying to understand who they were. There's a lot of spirituality in that period. And now, like you said, some of these children have never been loved. They don't understand. They don't have a safe place other than at school. But then when they're at school, it's not really safe, because if they're not in a group that's going to help protect them and they're on their own, they're going to be targets too.
Oh, yeah.
And, they can say there's not gangs all they want to. Yeah, there are. And it's in every school. It doesn't have to be Crips and Bloods. It can be, Delta Zeta and Alpha Sigma Tau. It's sororities, whatever.
I think I think in certain school where it's extreme violence, there's a lot of fights, there's a lot of assaults. I think it does leave a spiritual input in the school that
Yeah, it does.
it comes, especially with trauma. That's why a lot of people I've dealt with men, and I'm starting to deal with, especially with men in counseling with helpers, is men that are going into the woods with Bigfoot or doing this right here or whatever spiritual work and being wide open for trauma, not realizing that the first
Yeah.
thing that spirit's going to attack is that trauma. It's going to activate the crowd, And so the schools, yeah, that's a fascinating subject with
How do
energy.
you how do you help those people that are trying to be warriors that are getting sandbagged?
I just, I have a friend it's a beautiful friend of mine. He's in his 40s. He does a lot of work through his church. Now he's doing it through the school, and he's fixing to get to the point where he's going to start helping me, and I want him to start helping in the Spanish community with a lot of the outreach. A lot of this stuff, I don't know. I don't know if it's meant to be one.
Well, there have to be victories here and there.
Of
I
course,
mean,
but
because there's so many there's so many potential victims in these environments, and not just physical, spiritual, because if you don't have a safe place to go
oh yeah,
anywhere, then you're never going to have time to heal. One of the things when David and I were talking one day, and because we were married, got divorced, and remarried,
yeah,
and so we were talking one afternoon, and he was like, "You have to realize I am not moving. I am here,
yeah,
and you're safe."
yeah.
And you know, there's a reason I love that man. So, but and it was like, we're on the same team.
Yeah.
We will always be on the same team. And if he hadn't have gone to the effort to recognize the need for it, to have that conversation,
Yeah,
then would we have made it, 30 years?
right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
We were married when I was a kid,
right,
and got divorced, and then like 15 years later there we were again, and we remarried.
right.
And it's just one of those things you have to have, and these children have to have a spiritually and physically safe place
Yeah.
in order to be able to come out on the other side, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there's several kids. When I brought up Hayden, I never said his name, but it's not his real name, so he's fine. When I brought up him, the supernatural told me, he says, you will see him years later, and if it's meant to be, it will happen, and you'll be the one. And I firmly believe that. Matter of fact, we have this beautiful administrator that's leaving and going to a school where he's at, and she said, "Hey, guess who's at my school?" And I'm like, "Oh, is it school?" And she said this name, and I was like, "Oh." And so you have to have hope, number one, and that's what me and Kristen try to do. That's what I'm trying to do with helpers, especially with men in suicide. We talked about that this morning.
Yeah.
It's it's a it is a it's a battlefield medic full of blood. I mean, what you do with your supernatural. It's I think sometimes with going into the profession of counseling, the supernatural has told me all along this last part of my life, reject 9 and save the 1.
Well, because that one is the one who hasn't given up but is about to.
Yeah. And oftentimes, if you think you read the supernatural, if you know the supernatural, if you're sure of the supernatural, if you work in the supernatural, you'll realize that things happen for a reason.
Always.
That's the hardest part. And even as a preacher's kid, a preacher's kid who begged God, I don't want to be a preacher. And he said, well, how about a helper? And I thought, I can do that the rest of my life. And then all by default, 4 years ago, meeting and then being a part of so many people's lives in the supernatural. It's a transforming. It is a true calling. I'm not scared to death. I'm scared I won't reach enough.
Yeah,
You know, and
I
it's just
do know.
you know.
And, I just have to say, I think that what you're doing with helpers, you know, counseling men, because men don't really have places to be vulnerable,
That's right.
and yet they wouldn't be so quick to fight, the negative spirits that affect them because of their association, their home environment, their basic lives. If they step out of line with this group, they're going to be killed.
Yeah.
If they step out of line with this group, they're going to be kicked out of their home and they're still kids.
Yeah.
Or they're going to be abused worse in the home than by any gang.
Yeah.
It's a terrible time to be an inner city youth.
Oh yeah, and it's what's heartbreaking is when you have a youth that's 9 years old and he
Yeah.
comes in and he's got 4 or 5 brothers and he's like, "Hey, I can't take them to the elementary school. Can they come in?" Oh hell yeah, they can come in. Yes. Do they need a breakfast? Let's go steal them a breakfast at the country lunchroom. Lady's being an idiot. Let me get you a breakfast. But it's like, these kids. When you see the trauma in the kids that you see overseas, you know that they're it's heartbreaking a lot of the stuff that is seen because you can see as a light worker that it propagates and propagates and propagates, and then there's one that breaks it, and that is the most, especially with these young men. These men are oftentimes the men of the house. These young men are. And
Yeah.
that's hard to be the man of the house, and mama may be working 3 jobs because that's how she's making you eat. We have a young man that every once in a while he's a frequent flyer. He gets in trouble. We'll poo-poo him and send him back. He's just being a kid. And he helps me in the lunchroom. And he don't miss nothing. And I'm like, man, why you clean so good? He said, Mr. Taylor, if my mama comes home at 11:30 and 2 jobs, and if something's not done around here, she'll get me up. But these kids they're half sapping their hair. We had an instance 2 weeks ago. A little girl comes to school, totally mute, will not talk, didn't talk for 3 days. News came out. There was a murder directly related to her, and it was like, what are we doing for these kids? Because what happens, the way I learned what happened with me with trauma and supernatural trauma that's bound to a person not by their choice, is that when there is fear and trauma in a lot of these kids stay up watching YouTube and putting stuff in their head. All it takes is for a spirit to just materialize so very easily because they've ripened the environment. That's why they fight at the drop of a hat. I will tell you, I'm starting a new project on YouTube. And it is called this. It's called Helpers, of course, but it's going to be young men's stories. 15 minutes. Tell me about. And I'm finding out a lot of these beautiful African American teenagers and men just won't. They don't want to rap. They just want to talk.
Yeah, they do.
Just talk.
Yeah. They just want to be able to have a safe conversation.
And then if you've got the ones that's hard and they have uncles or people that are in the penitentiary system, or you have people that see violence on a daily, and people don't realize there are kids that see it every day. What you do is you get so traumatized to it that you shrink down and them kids are ripe for spiritual attacks,
Yeah, they are.
It's a very depressing subject, but it's one, I don't know. I'm called to
Well, it is a depressing subject, but conversations like this are where the hope comes from.
Yeah.
Because it is it is a supernatural battle.
Well, these are you have to realize that whenever a child, humbly, even myself, I say, is targeted. They're usually these kids, these new kids are. I'm not saying rainbow kids, but they're extremely gifted in the supernatural in other ways, more creative
Yes.
than we are, and some of it is visualization, and so with the kids that I have dealt with in the school system that have been in that situation where there is a spiritual attachment, that's the hard ones. But I do believe that they get a chance to part if they want it.
Well, I think that they do too. And the bad part is we're talking, you know, urban kids,
Yep.
but where I lived rurally in Georgia, there was that too.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't do well in a rural environment, but it was still, my kids were just starting school,
Yeah.
and it was, I mean, it wasn't idyllic for me, but it was a pretty good place to be a kid,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Well.
And but there's still stuff there.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Of course, because you go
It's the
to
nature of the beast.
oh yeah, because it's spiritual warfare. Spiritual is not in one area. It's an
No,
all
it's
encompassing.
everywhere.
Yeah, and what I find fascinating about helping these young men that I'm seeing lots of spiritually gifted that are dead. It's almost like they're I call them linchpins Christians. They're one person that's supposed to be part of saving a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like going after the diamond and the Arkansas Diamond State Park. Look at that one,
Yeah.
and that's the true magic of it. And it's I think the hardest part of all of awakening of who I'm supposed to be as a helper and begging God not to make me a preacher, but let me, and I'm more of a combination of whatever. I draw things. I've learned to, and I've talked to you about this, about
Yeah.
energy, sending energy, receiving it. That's why I talk to people on the phone. I don't have to look at you to say if I
Mhm.
need to help you. And if I don't need to help you, boom, I don't need to help you. But I've figured out what works for me. Yeah.
That's the key for everything, though.
Yeah.
Because it's like with the paranormal investigations, right?
Right.
I knew if I was supposed to be the person there,
Right.
right? And I kept getting sent to inner city Birmingham, and that did not need to be one single person doing that because it was so the whole you've been there.
Yeah.
There's a whole community that is trying to fight out of this.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, there's what you're doing is so very important. What I do is important, but I'm not doing it on the scale that you're doing it. I do it situationally, and I don't really now I deal more with grown-ups with that because my kids are grown.
Right.
So I don't have that. That's not who I am now.
Yeah. Well, and
And
I'm finding out a lot of the young men that I have helped.
mhm.
If I was to flip my life on the same, it would have been the same. Mine was hidden.
Yeah.
And I know that supernaturally bound and accepting my call of who I'm supposed to do, and then going really into the clinical side of why things happen. And
Mhm.
it's important. I think a lot of times in Christianity and a lot of faiths that there are moments of miraculous healing that does take place, but there is also, I have found that when it comes to trauma, yes, it can be in a miraculous healing, but it also has to come back, because if you take a balloon and blow it up and then let it go, it goes back to its original form. And so,
Yes. Oh,
um,
that's a great analogy.
well, and it's that's why the rest of my life will be devoted to people that are placed in the path and rejecting the nine and going after the one. It's very, that's why I wanted to call and tell you this new person, this new call. And And it's not going to be boring at all.
It would be tough for you to do boring.
Oh,
Not gonna lie.
I saw boring preachers growing up that
Yeah.
talked about all of this stuff, but they'd never experienced it. So I've said to myself, anybody can be a pet nowadays or a dragon. I'm just going to be what I define as a man of God in a new form, a helper.
Well, there's a lot worse things to be, Jonathan.
Shit, yes, there is.
But you know what? I'm so proud of you
I ain't proud of
because
that. So.
you're a different man than you were 3 years ago, for sure.
Oh, and you know what else I did during that 3 years?
I'm afraid to ask. What else did you do?
I played with Moldavite. Oh, what a terrible experience that was. It hurt me. Oh, it hurt me.
I don't even know what that is.
It's Kate.
Multivite?
It's a mineral. It's a mineral that's used. Is it like a meteorite? But it's a mineral that comes from space that you have to be very careful with because a lot of it will ignite dark energy in you that you don't realize is there.
Well, I don't want that.
Well, no, never mess with it. It will hurt you and so yeah, it was very fun. I did all kind of. One thing I do with my spirituality when I'm helping people is I will take a bunch of mud on a big white wall and I'll chunk it on there and I'll ask them 1,000 questions. And if I get a bite in a certain area, that's how it works for me. But I figured it out for me. But
Right.
I can also, but we talked about energy. I love object lessons with energy. I don't have to pray for you. I'll just send an object to you.
Yeah.
And then the flea market stuff that I told you this morning, stuff we come home that had attachments from the flea market. It was like, crap.
You should check before you take it home, Jonathan.
But there's one in we go to one in Fultondale, and every time we go by this booth, the stuff will cackle, stuff will fall off. And I found in this booth, it was this weird face. It was like a rubber doll. It was a face. And of course, I was drawn right to it.
Right to it.
And I was like, and Chris is like, no. She was immediately, no. I was like, no. And so I walked by it, and there's this little freaking carousel that just starts playing. And I was like, oh, it's going to be one of them kind of days. But to me, it's fun because I know my energy is upsetting things when I'm walking by.
That's freaking hilarious.
It's true.
Did you take the carousel home?
No, I didn't take it home. I'm crazy enough. I don't need any extra business going around on here. No, I got enough.
That's so funny.
That's true. Very true. Ask her. She'll tell you.
Well, I already knew you were crazy. That's one of the reasons I like you so much.
Exactly. Here I am. But here I am in this new part of my life. And it is really a beautiful culmination of a lifetime of hell. And Kristen has changed my life. The supernatural has changed. I actually just quit running and accepting my gift. If you were to look at my life as a Pentecostal kid growing up and look back, there's all of these totems that have been totally smashed to hell in bits. And everything that I thought I knew, but now I'm getting more to the point of my spiritual knowledge than my human knowledge. And it is the most grandest adventure you've ever. I mean, it's life changing, and it obviously is life changing. Yeah.
Well, what do you? I'm sorry, I'm just enjoying the carousel visual so much. But
I didn't bring it home though.
well, at least yeah. I just don't even know. This is a side of you that until we started talking again recently, I would never have bet on showing up.
Yeah, I'm a miracle. Yeah, I'm a miracle.
You are a miracle. And you're so open. And you're so light.
I'm connected now.
Yeah, and it's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you, and I'm so really proud of the work that you're doing because, you know, the last time we talked, you were talking about the activity that's happening at the school. And, you know, and so now you still have activity at the school, but there's a different source creating it. Does the activity that you had years ago that was innate, really, I think, to the structure, does it still interact with what's being brought into the school?
Oh, yeah. Today I went to the guy there at 5 or 6 o'clock. Checked the bathrooms, made sure they were clean. He had left a mop bucket out. I go around the corner, I go, and it goes, because it's got a stupid bum wheel. And I turn around, I'm like, stop. I don't got time for this shit. And I walked off, and it stopped. And it was just like, so it's almost discovering who I am, who I'm truly called to be.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while, right? Because I think I have. When I leave the school, I'm going to pray over the whole thing. Since nobody else has the balls enough to do it, I'm going to do it. When I leave, at least to give back. Because I'll be back in the community working with the kids anyway. And so I'm just going to do it because nobody told me I can't.
Well, that's the way I look at things too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a nasty.
You didn't say it can't be done. Why would I not do it?
Well,
sometimes even if they say that, because I am kind of a rebel when it comes to clearing a space and kind of shielding people.
Well, I look at it from my old days. And I have realized about myself and my supernatural calling, if they're stupid enough to show themselves, they're stupid enough to get dealt with.
Always.
Because think about this. I tell people, I counsel Christians all the time. Oh, I saw this horrible spirit. I'm at work and this person's gossiping on me. You just saw a spirit in operation, gossip. So why are you so surprised? Yeah. Most people I'm finding out with dealing with people, especially coming to terms with their gifts, especially coming to terms with their supernatural, their magic, whatever it is most people just ignore 99% of the signs. Like I was talking to you today, 3 birds went over. What does that mean? It may not mean anything, but you're looking for the signs. You're expecting. Yeah. And I go in there. Sometimes I have to be very careful when I'm in the building, since I deal so much with trauma and spiritual trauma attacks on me while I'm in the building. I listen to music that is instrumental. I don't listen to anything with words, because I'll be listening to something. I'll be listening to Tupac and then 6 fights and stuff. And I'm like, I may be a spiritual conduit in the building. I got to be careful.
Good point. I would not have thought of that.
Oh, yeah, because when I was really dealing with my PTSD, with my trauma, with all the abuse that went on in my family, the spiritual abuse, the religious abuse, everything, it was setting off trauma in the school, and the school was setting off trauma in me. It was almost like a crash course of finding out who you are. I mean, for real.
That's wicked.
Yeah, it's, I told you I went through the gym when I first come to the school system, I went to the gym and I'd go through at 6 o'clock, turn on the lights. And in the winter, a gym that is 60 years old with rubber on the floor is terrifying as heck. And so they were changing the air conditioner system out in the winter. And so I'm going through there and I hear this guy think, "Hey boy, you better get off that floor." And I pull my flashlight up and I'm thinking it's a maintenance guy. The alarm was on. It was counting down. It had been on. I get over here in the dark. And then I found out that there was a terrible fight in the 80s where this girl was just put in a wheelchair. It was a terrible fight in that bathroom. So I'm thinking, okay, there's some type of connection. And then I got to the point where I was tired of it bullying me, and I took care of it. I've never had a problem out of it again. But then it moved. I think it moved to another part of the stupid school, because it's like, so yeah, here I am helping people.
Isn't it funny when they just shift? And then you
Yes,
go in and there they are, those jerks. Yes.
yes. And I tell people, if you are going to work in the supernatural, whether it's helping people, whether it's light, whatever you're doing, if you push into the supernatural will push back 100%
Yes.
of the time if you are open to it. You know, what
That's
a
true.
journey. What a journey.
And you still have all this time left before you're not there.
I don't know. I may die tomorrow. I may not. That's the way I live. I mean, that's why you know, Kristen brought a book home one time, and it poofed my whole head, and it took away all my excuses. And it was Elkhart Tolle, The Power of the Now.
Yes. Oh
Wow.
my God, that's such a great book.
And
Oh my
she had
God.
just, and I was like, dang, I can't use any of them old excuses about trauma anymore. And then I started using it. It's just a beautiful book. So, Kate, thank you for this opportunity for giving me the chance to show a different side of me and a different side of where I'm going in my life. Thank you.
Well, I'm just really proud of and for you because the shift from the last time we spoke or hung out is so blatantly obvious. And I didn't think that you weren't wonderful before, but I think that what you're doing with this new system is just amazing. And I know that Carl just put in chat that we've got 10 minutes left. If you want to win a copy of Fate magazine, you just go in there and put your hashtag Bigfoot, and Carl is going to run a computer thing that picks names out of there. And right now, only one person has put hashtag Bigfoot in the chat. So, and this woman has so many Fate magazines because she travels with me. So,
Hey, hey, I discovered the Fate magazines. It happened to me. Volume 1, 2, and 3. I love it.
did you love it?
Heck yeah, because there was so many different. I mean, it was like a paranormal kind of cornucopia of just different stories.
It
World
is.
War II, when the World War II planes fly over in England and people hear them all the time, I'm like, holy yes! I got digital. I love my digital copies. So
Well, I'll tell you what, we have, you know, we had some problems with getting the publications done because where Phyllis lives, Phyllis Galdi, who owns the magazine, she got hit by Helene in the Carolinas.
oh my God, are you
So
kidding?
it's been, she had a health crisis and was recovering from that, and had, I mean, she is such a badass woman. She really is. She had hips replaced. She has goats and chickens. She had the surgery for the hips, and she was out chasing the goats. I mean, I'm just like, you're chasing the goats? And she's like, well, somebody has to. And I'm like,
Well,
so hips are much different than knees, apparently.
my son is going to school, pursuing his degree in North Carolina, and our heart is really up there. I love the people up there. Let me know because I look for Fate magazines in the. I grew up with so. You remember Omni?
Yes.
I mean, it's just like, well, that is so. So is she back on track?
Well, she is back on track. I mean, I'm not going to kid around. She is fierce. After the hips, she had a pretty severe stroke,
Oh, wow.
and then had recovery from that. And she is so, so strong. And then the hurricane, and everybody on Black Mountain and in Nashville and around there
Oh,
just
yeah.
being left to themselves because nobody was coming to help them. So now there's appears to be some help coming through. I mean, the Amish, oh my God, the Amish were heroes. I
Yes.
mean, the Amish will always be heroes because they are community based. But so hopefully she's got the new edition put together, and it's going to be going to the printer if it's not already there. So I'm pretty excited because I have an article in there, so that'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, and let me know after we get done, after we talk, and because I want some when you said that, I felt to pull to send her a word, just a beautiful prayer. So I want to get her number and send her something on the download, with just
I will.
something beautiful. And it's I told you when I was growing up that I read because I didn't have a TV, so that I made the realization a couple of months ago that the town I was in, that I grew up in, had a huge occult library. Now I look back and I'm thinking somebody was reading that stuff.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder. It's funny how things are in your path and you just
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is when that path can bite you in the hiney. So,
in what way?
well, because you didn't realize that you were being taught as you're coming through, right? So then you get through it, you survive it,
Yes.
you come out on the other side. You had asked me about the Duela thing,
Yeah.
and Duela thing, and we'll talk about that on another occasion.
Yeah.
But when you don't know that's what you're supposed to do, but yet there you are doing it with both parents, that you weren't supposed to be doing it with, it's really interesting how your life changes on a dime. And
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
I can remember. I can remember reading a book at 5 years old on lycanthropy that was published in 1977 because a lot of them movies in the 70s they say they were Satan's girls or remember all the 70 B movies.
I do.
And
And
so
I loved them, a lot of them.
and I'm like, and I can remember the book to this day, and I'm like, was I not supervised? And I still remember because it was actually showed black and white pictures, the steps, and it was done in Eastern Europe. And I'm like, something's wrong with me.
Well, something is wrong with you, Jonathan, but probably not about that.
Life after, I mean, that's why I've run from it this whole time, right?
I love it. I love it. But so, Carl, do we need to go with that? Nope. All right. We're just going to send that on then, since we have a individual, and I'll be seeing her. It's my best friend. I feel like people are going to be, that's rigged. But if you don't put your name in, you're not going to win. Right?
That's right. Exactly.
So,
it's been a pleasure, Kat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I will get with Phyllis, and because I never give her number out without making sure.
No, totally cool.
You know how that rolls.
Do you know a lot of the Asheville Magic people?
Yeah.
Good. Because I know there's a connection there. Because me and Kristen, it's one of our most beautiful places we love to go. But every time we leave, we end up fighting like cats and dogs, and we act crazy. So now, every time we leave, we pray, and we're fine. But it's a nutty place.
It is a nutty. Well, Harry Anderson moved there from New Orleans.
Did she really?
Harry Anderson, the guy from Night Court, the magic guy.
Oh, yes.
And after Katrina and the aftermath of that, they moved to Asheville, and he opened his magic shop there. And he's passed away, but he was brilliant.
Kristen, who is that one we went to in Asheville? There's one that we went to, we keep going to, that she writes a bunch of books, and she's in Asheville, and just a very, very beautiful soul. I know I'll meet her one day because I've seen it. So
yeah,
and she will too. So well, have a great night. I've got tomorrow. We've got awards day tomorrow.
It's that time of year.
But here's what the bad thing is. There's been beef in the school that you can have a bunch of parents together with kids that have beef. Last year we had like 3 fights broke out. It's a bunch of bullshit.
Gotta love it.
It's humans at their best behavior. All right. Bye, girl.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. And for everybody listening, thank y'all so much for joining us, because You're the reason we do these shows. And I have so much fun doing it. Thank y'all for listening and letting me do it. So we will see. I'll be on Sunday with Fate Mag Radio. And I have Rich Hoffman of the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies, of which I'm now a proud member. So we're going to be talking about the conference coming up in June, and it's going to be at the Von Braun Civic Center, but you can do it virtually too. So we'll be having all that information for you. Thank you. Talk to y'all soon. Good night.